Avatar: The Way of Water is maybe the most anticipated movie of the last decade. And now that it's here, honestly, it's a mixed bag of, I don't even know, fish? Avatar TWoW has some good aspects, plenty of bad ideas, and a lot of ugly details. Like its predecessor, TWoW is very much a movie of vapid beauty. It looks fantastic on the surface, but like a bimbo, underneath the glamour, there's not much going on. The actual plot of TWoW is pretty simple. The story picks up a decade and a half or so after the first one. Jake and Neytiri have started a family. They've got 2 sons and 2 daughters, one of which is adopted, Kiri. Kiri was mysteriously conceived by Sigourney Weaver's unconscious avatar body. Mysteriously.
Right.
So Jake and his family live alongside the human survivors who sided with the Na'vi in the last movie, and this includes Spider, who is apparently Colonel Quaritch's son. Remember him? Colonel Quaritch's son from the last movie? Yeah, neither do I. But the humans have returned to Pandora and are beginning to transform it into a new Earth, because ours is dying. The Marines from the previous movie apparently had their consciousnesses uploaded onto USB drives, which have now been downloaded into clones of themselves. Only now they have Na'vi bodies, including Quaritch. You see, they've been tasked with finding Jake because of the threat that he poses to the human takeover of Pandora, and while hunting him down, the Marines come across Jake's children. They end up capturing Spider, and so then Jake, knowing that they'll use Spider to find him, takes his family and flees to the reef tribes of Pandora. Once in the reef, Jake and his family have to adapt to a strange new way of Na'vi life, struggling to make friends and learn their ways. So the Marines eventually track them down, capture the kids, and use them as leverage to lure Jake out. Jake then confronts Quaritch's clone and defeats him, but loses his oldest son in the process, and all of this makes him realize that the Na'vi have to stand together to face the threat of humanity instead of trying to run from it like he did at the start of TWoW. Oh, and I almost forgot, it's also about a race of highly intelligent alien whales. Yeah, that's a really big thing in this movie. Let's talk about the good. It's good to return to the world of Pandora and explore new aspects about it, like the ocean life that was introduced, even if it is all just the same stuff as last time, reskinned with fins. The special effects look incredible and really highlight how much it pays to actually give the artists who do this kind of thing for a living the proper amount of time to complete their work. Marvel. Call me corny, but the family dynamic in the movie, it's refreshing. It acts as the heart of the story. They're a loving family. They look out for each other, and the dad isn't portrayed as a complete and total buffoon. Yeah, they're jealous and they bicker, but they also stick up for each other when attacked by outsiders. They're the emotional investment the audience needs in this story outside of the whales. TWoW has, for the most part, well-defined characters. They have flaws and shortcomings, as well as clear strengths and individual personality traits that create dynamic interactions. You understand clearly, again, for the most part, who each character is and what's important to them, which is appreciated because it's nearly impossible to keep the names of the characters straight in TWoW. They might as well be named Big Brother, Little Brother, Sigourney Weaver as a 13-year-old, Reef Princess, Mean Boy from Ocean Village #1, Mean Boy from Ocean Village #2, Ocean Village Queen. You get the point. TWoW does a pretty good job of paying off what little it does set up throughout the story, like the stuff with Sigourney Weaver's powers to control the ocean, I guess. Alright, hear me out on this. Despite how corny it is, it's actually handled relatively well in the movie. They establish it, they show her growing her abilities while training to use them throughout the story, and in the finale, she ends up using them to save the day. Corny, but competent. TWoW even has some genuinely interesting ideas it explores, like the racial dynamics of the Na'vi. It's cool to see the differences between the ocean and forest Na'vi, like how their tails and arms are more well adapted for swimming in the water. I mean, what the fuck is that? I'll tell you what it is. It's the kind of imaginative fantasy sci-fi that I'm at this movie for. You know, it's also worth mentioning that the plot device of ambergris, Amrita, being extracted from the whale's brain brains is a much better MacGuffin than unobtainium from the last Avatar. They never even mention that shit in TWoW, but a substance that makes people stop aging, which needs to be extracted from the brains of sentient, peaceful alien whales, is definitely a lot more disturbing. Okay, that was the good. Here's the bad. TWoW's dialogue borders on CW quality. It's a lot of heavy-handed writing that either is working to deliver lengthy exposition or desperately filling in character backstory. Certain lines made me laugh out loud that I do not think were supposed to be funny. For example, like when they found the alien mother whale dead and the ocean queen then proceeds to explain to everyone else that the whale was apparently a great composer of music. She then blurts out about 30 seconds of backstory for this fucking whale. They even gave the whales subtitles in some scenes. That's a mistake. Just let the whales moan and sing and have the Na'vi respond to that. They understand each other. We get it. We don't need subtitles for the alien whales. And let's talk for a second about all the member berries they're picking from the first Avatar movie. Remember this from the first one? Remember that? Remember taming cliff dragons? Now the Marines do it. Remember Jake having to learn new ways of a foreign Na'vi culture? Let's do it again with his kids. Remember the great mother tree? Well, she's a great mother reef now. Remember all the floating mountains? They're inside the cove. Remember unobtainium? Neither do we. Take the main characters, for example. It's largely beat for beat the same as the first one again. Jake's kids need to learn to adapt to a different Na'vi lifestyle. They're outsiders and slowly work to prove themselves. They have members of the tribe give them a hard time, but eventually win them over and become friends. And they even tame an untamable loner animal and use it in the final conflict. Granted, Avatar was never the most original idea, but TWoW is some straight up photocopy bullshit. Let's talk about the worst thing in this movie though. Sigourney Weaver playing a 13-year-old. It's bad. I enjoyed her character just fine in the last movie, and they do an okay job aging her voice down, but every now and then she delivers a line that just unexpectedly sounds like a 70-year-old woman. It's almost as jarring as Jermaine Clemens' terrible accent that keeps breaking through in the movie. Even as a completely CGI character, Sigourney Weaver still shines through. It's a compliment to her presence as an actor, but it also made her character fall somewhere deep into the uncanny valley, and so Kiri comes off as just plain unnatural at times. Oh, and speaking of unnatural, Sigourney Weaver's Avatar body being immaculately conceived is just plain chilling when you think about it. Nobody knows how this happened. Oh, really? I think I know how it might have happened. You don't think one of those perv sex-starved scientists didn't get it on with her floating comatose body while it was in that tank?
Because of the implication.
And speaking of things that should be obvious but for some reason aren't, they have jellyfish that they can bond with in order to breathe underwater. So why don't the Na'vi put those things on their backs whenever they go underwater to go swimming? And now let's talk about the ugly. TWoW's decent ideas that are unfortunately tainted with all kinds of stupid. It's really ambitious to tell an entire story about aliens that look alien and have alien names, but shit if I could remember anyone's name except for Took, and that's just because they say it about 1,000 times. At the very least, the Na'vi come in 2 shades of blue, and I guarantee you we'll get at least a third one come the Seed Bearer. The overall plot is fine. Again, they do a good job of setting things up and paying them off as the story goes along, but at the same time, a lot of the plot points in TWoW are completely asinine when you get into the finer details of them. Like the idea that the murdered Marines from the last movie have now been resurrected into Avatar bodies to hunt down Jake. That's kinda cool, retcon, but okay. However, they're traversing Pandora disguised as Na'vi, and they've just decided to keep wearing their human clothes.
Why?
Also, I couldn't help but wonder if they've scanned all the Marines' brains before they left for Pandora before the first movie, why isn't there also a clone of Jake? Who better to go after Jake than himself? But you know what? They're probably saving some stupid shit like that for the sequel. The family being on the run is an interesting plot. It created a scenario that got the characters out into new parts of Pandora, but once they got to the new place, it devolves into a repeat of the first Avatar, a fish out of water story, or in this case, Na'vi in water. And speaking of the water, I want to talk about the intelligent alien whales for a second. So having an entirely different species that's sentient, living on Pandora in an entirely different way than the Na'vi, that is good stuff. But the way that the details about them are just shoehorned into this movie, like how they compose great songs and all that kind of stuff, it comes across as so lame. It just really fucking taints it. TWoW doesn't even deliver an emotional payoff. It's got about 5 fake-out deaths, and then 1 real death that sticks with a character that you could not care less about. The older brother should have had a relationship with the Reef Princess instead of the younger brother. Younger brother already has a relationship with the whale. He's got his thing for the movie. Give the older brother a budding relationship with Reef Princess as a way to get to know him so that we actually give a shit when he dies. And actually, come to think of it, it's a great example of the low stakes this movie operates on despite the grandeur of its spectacle. But as far as final judgment goes on this movie, I do think it's fair to reserve it until the Avatar series is said and done with. I mean, for all we know, this is an integral chapter in an epic story that vindicates it. But at the end of the day, on its own merits, it's a mediocre movie at best. The truth is that we've had over a decade of CGI spectacle like this. When Avatar 1 came out, that was all new to us. We had never seen anything quite like it visually. But now, it's just par for the course when it comes to one of these Disney-financed blockbusters. I am curious to see how this movie gets received by everyone else. It's a fun blockbuster that you can sit down with and enjoy without feeling like you're being preached at the entire time. And honestly, that alone makes Avatar TWoW more entertaining than half the crap that's been produced since the first Avatar. But that's a low bar that any mediocre movie could soar over these days. Remember Prey? TWoW's good enough that I'll be back for the sequel, Avatar: The Seed Bearer. But it's also bad enough that I don't feel the need to ever watch it again. TWoW is just the latest and most expensive drop of water in this endless ocean of CGI saturated content.